one of them. That's a really excellent book. That was the first book I read on the subject. And Wild Herbs, Australia and New Zealand by Tim Low, which is all about particularly urban and agricultural weeds which you can eat. So both of those books make it quite clear. It's very clear as illustrations, and it describes similar plants which are obviously not the plant that it's talking about. As with any new food, there's the possibility of allergic reaction. So if you're going to eat any food, that's something you have to risk. Now, evolution has favoured plant toxins which either smell or taste really bad, and as such most poisonous plants, with the exception maybe of fungus and possibly many exceptions, but many are very bitter, acidic or pungent. However, there are also many bitter, sour and pungent plants which are perfectly edible. But a good rule is not to eat unknown plants that taste bitter, acidic or pungent. Now, there are various toxins in wild edible plants, as there are in cultivated plants, for example, oxalates and nitrates. Tim Low, author of that book, concludes that they are no more toxic than cultivated veggies, and the margin of safety is, for things like oxalates and nitrates, is usually very large. But there are stories of some people in situations of war in cities where the only thing they could eat was weeds. After a few months, they became a bit sick. But when they went back on a better diet, their health improved. Now I'll move on to a few ways that you can use weeds. The most obvious is to use directly in place of things like spinach and silver beet and other leaves, and you can use them in many different cooked and raw recipes. A couple more suggestions from these two books. You can dry, crush and store them for later survival use. You could mix dry crushed leaves with dry crushed herbs and use that as a flavouring sprinkle instead of salt. Or you can make a green smoothie with the leaves and the fruit. So I haven't actually tried any of those, but they're interesting ideas. What I've done is made miniature quiches, and I don't have the recipe here, but I should have, and I should go through that recipe. At this point, the audience gets the quiche, which are now frozen in this box. Now, the quiches are gluten-free because I know some people in the audience cannot eat gluten. So I'll very quickly go through the recipe. It's basically flour, vegan egg substitute, soy milk, salt, turmeric, oregano, rosemary, parsley, 3 or 4 large handfuls of leaves. I used about half weeds and half silver beet from my garden. Other veggies if you would like, such as onion or anything. Sliced tomato as decoration, and some Nuttelex margarine to grease the cupcake tray. So you basically mix together pretty much everything except the leaves, and then add the leaves, chopped up finely, and then put them in the greased cupcake trays, put the sliced tomato on and bake until set. So it's a fairly simple recipe. I'll go on to which weeds I used in the recipe. I went for a bit of a walk and found a variety of leaves. So those are the ones I'm going to concentrate on talking about. Cobbler's pegs first. I've got most of these. That's an actual example of these. Some of them I took a photo. So that's the cobbler's peg. They can be a little bit bitter. They can be dried for later use. They're South American originally. They're widely eaten around the world despite their bitter taste, and some people even depend on them for survival. And an interesting fact about it is that there was some research done showing that it's really good for the tooth decay bacteria, Streptococcus mutans. So if you has a really strong antibacterial action against it. So if you chew a couple of leaves after eating, say you didn't have toothpaste or for whatever reason, it may be a bit of a substitute. Okay, so docks next. I did have a dock. Where's my dock? There's a dock gone to seed on my garden. You can see the leaves are a bit wavy, a bit curly, so this is a curled dock, I believe. They're deep-rooted dynamic accumulators, so it means that they should have high mineral content in the leaves. The taste is slightly sour, which does indicate that it's high in oxalates. So with any high oxalate leaves, even like spinach is very high in, quite high in oxalates as well. So you can just boil it for a minute or so in water and then drain the water, and then most of the oxalates go out in the water. The seeds and the root are also edible, and the root is a laxative. And they were eaten by our prehistoric ancestors, we know, because they were found in the stomachs of some preserved remains. Next we've got plantain, one which sort of reminds me a bit of the docks as well, but you can tell the difference because the veins go longitudinally, whereas the dock veins look more like a normal leaf. They sort of go out from the central vein. The plantains, the seeds are edible. They're mucilaginous, so you can add them to drinks for a jelly sort of effect. They are rather bitter, I've found. The leaves, the young leaves are more edible. The older ones can tend to be a little bit fibrous. These also were eaten by our prehistoric ancestors. And this plant has had many healing functions attributed to it. Isabel Shipard, in that book, tends to agree, whereas Tim Lowe suggests that they might be a little bit exaggerated, the healing claims. Okay, we've got amaranth. There's another one I put in the quiche. It's an amaranth. It's a fairly characteristic seed, or flower seed sort of arrangement. So there's various different types of amaranth, but you can sort of tell because the seedy thing looks kind of similar. Now, all species of amaranth are probably edible. The seeds are very high in protein. I think they've got all the essential amino acids in a good combination. The leaves might be high in oxalic acid again, but the leaves are eaten in parts of Asia and Africa.